Now to the new text messages revealed in the case of that missing mom, Kelsey Berreth, who disappeared on Thanksgiving. Her fiance is now facing murder charges. ABC's Paula Ferris is here.
On a warm late November day in 2018, in a small town near Colorado Springs, 29-year-old Kelsey Berreth went grocery shopping with her daughter. She planned to spend a cozy Thanksgiving preparing a sweet potato casserole, decorating the house, and celebrating the holiday. Everything seemed like the perfect touch of everyday life. Mother, daughter, home, plans for the future. But then everything changed. When her mother called, Kelsey did not answer. The girl, sitting quietly in her stroller, did not say that her mother had come home. Kelsey's car was parked in its spot. Her condo was untouched. But she herself had disappeared without a trace. The morning after her disappearance turned into a state of alarm. Parents, friends, colleagues, everyone understood that something serious had happened. The investigation came to shocking conclusions. This was not just a disappearance, not a runaway. It was murder. The evidence showed that this was a case of violence, betrayal, and a carefully planned criminal scheme. The house where she lived became a place where life had stopped. There had been a warm hello, and a moment later, the cold shadow of a stranger's hand. The city, where people were used to feeling safe, turned out to be vulnerable. The walls of the houses, which had previously been decorated with garlands, now seemed like fragile barriers between the light of familiarity and the darkness of danger. The question, "Where is Kelsey?" became more than just a topic of conversation among neighbors. It became a bomb of anxiety planted in people's hearts. For her daughter, who was not yet 2 years old at the time, that day was the first without her mother. For her parents, it was the beginning of sleepless nights and endless what-ifs. For everyone who knew Kelsey, it was a blow from which there was no recovery. Her life, her plans, her voice, all of it fell silent where it had only just begun. And when investigators entered her home, they saw not just a crime scene, they saw a broken trust. A woman who believed in the light found herself trapped in her own home. And at that moment, it became clear, not every birthday means safety.
This morning, disturbing new details in the suspected killing of Kelsey Berreth. Court documents, including dozens of search warrants, shedding new light on Patrick Frazee.
November 22nd, 2018, Thanksgiving Day. For most Americans, it's a holiday when families gather around the table and the air is filled with the smell of pumpkin pie and warmth. For Kelsey Berreth, this day also began as a normal holiday. She woke up in her apartment in Woodland Park, Colorado. Sunlight flooded the kitchen, flowers stood on the table, and next to them was a basket of her little daughter's toys. Kelsey was a young mother, energetic, attentive, and organized. She worked as a flight instructor and loved the sky. It was her refuge and her pride. Her colleagues said she was a person who always stays on course, disciplined but gentle, smiling, and a little shy. In the morning, she went to the local supermarket to buy groceries. Surveillance cameras captured her with her daughter in a stroller. Calm, collected, with a slight smile. This was the last video of her alive. Around noon, she met with her fiancé, Patrick Frazee, to hand over the child for the holiday. They did not live together, but they raised their daughter together, trying to maintain a relationship. According to his family, the meeting went smoothly. But for investigators, this moment was the last confirmed event in Kelsey's life. After that, there was nothing. Her phone went silent, messages stopped being sent, and no one saw her alive again. By evening, Kelsey's mother, Cheryl, tried to call her daughter. At first, it was just to say hello, but then she began to worry. There was no answer. A short, unremarkable message remained on her voicemail, the last trace of her presence. The next day, friends and neighbors began to worry. Kelsey's car was parked outside her house, the doors were locked, and the inside was tidy. But something was disturbing. There was no trash in the trash can, the refrigerator was empty, and on the bed lay a neatly folded jacket that she always wore on cold evenings. It looked as if she had left for a short trip and never returned. The first suspicion fell on Patrick. He claimed that he had not seen Kelsey after their meeting, that she had gone shopping and was supposed to visit relatives. His voice was calm, even too calm. When the police asked why he wasn't worried if she hadn't picked up her child, he replied, "We don't always talk every day." But people who knew Kelsey said she was an attentive mother and couldn't just disappear. Several days passed. Kelsey's social media accounts were silent, her phone was not connected to the network, and her bank card had not been used. Her mother filed a missing person report, and soon the search turned into an investigation. Volunteers, police officers, fellow pilots, everyone was searching, but there was no sign of her. A week later, investigators received a strange lead. A message had been sent from Kelsey's phone to her employer, saying that she was taking a vacation. The signal came from Idaho, hundreds of kilometers away. It looked like an attempt to stage a cover-up. It would later emerge that Patrick had asked an acquaintance, a nurse from Idaho, to send these messages to create the illusion that Kelsey had left. While the police were working, Kelsey's family lived in anticipation. Every phone call, every noise in the yard made her mother flinch. Cheryl recalled, "I knew she couldn't just leave. My heart told me she was somewhere nearby, just not with us anymore." With each passing day, hope faded. Kelsey's house turned into a memorial. Candles, photos, and toys appeared on the porch. People brought flowers, and fear was evident in their eyes. If this happened to her, a young mother, kind, smart, responsible, then it could happen to anyone. That Thanksgiving, which was supposed to be the start of the holidays, became the day when the smile familiar to the whole town disappeared. And no one knew then that behind this disappearance lay a carefully planned betrayal.
After Berreth was killed, apparently staged by Frazee. Another exchange from Berreth's phone to Frazee 3 days after authorities say the young mother died.
When the report of Kelsey Berreth's disappearance came into the police, officers initially treated the case as a routine temporary disappearance. The young woman had perhaps left, perhaps she was tired and had decided to take a break. But the longer they investigated her last days, the clearer it became. She couldn't have just left. There were no signs of a struggle in the apartment, but everything looked strangely tidy, as if someone had cleaned up. The police noticed the fresh smell of cleaning products, even though Kelsey hadn't even had time to use the new bottle in the cupboard. The experts took samples from the floor, the handrails, and the sink. The analysis showed traces of blood, carefully washed away but still visible under ultraviolet light. It was Kelsey's blood. The police began questioning Patrick Freese, her fiancé, and the child's father. He appeared calm, spoke evenly, and said that he had last seen Kelsey on November 22nd when he picked up his daughter. According to him, she looked tired but cheerful. After that, he assured them they had not communicated. He even claimed to have received a message from her a few days later, the very one that came from the phone found later in Idaho. Investigators became suspicious. Why was the message sent from another state? Why didn't the man who called himself her lover show any concern when she didn't return to her daughter? Why didn't he report her missing himself? They checked his farm in Floricante, a small town nearby. There, among the old barns and stalls, stood a metal barrel. At the bottom were the charred remains of something unidentifiable. The smell of burnt plastic mixed with something heavy and metallic. Forensic experts would later confirm that these were the remains of Kelsey Berreth. But before that became known, the investigation went through weeks of searching. Volunteers combed the area, flew in helicopters, and looked for traces of the car. Posters with her photo were hung everywhere. A young woman with a soft smile and clear eyes. A face that was impossible to forget. One day, the police released footage from surveillance cameras near her home. It showed a man in a cowboy hat entering her apartment. In his hands was a black plastic bag. It was Patrick. He had returned there after the murder to destroy the evidence. The key moment in the investigation was the confession of a woman from Idaho, a nurse named Crystal. She said that Patrick had made a monstrous request to her. "Help me get rid of her." He had planned the murder in advance and had asked her to do it several times, but she couldn't bring herself to do it. After the murder, he called her and asked her to help cover up the traces. She agreed, out of fear, according to her. She was the one who took Kelsey's phone to send a message from another state. When this story became known, the city froze. What looked like a disappearance turned out to be a carefully planned murder. Patrick lured Kelsey into his own trap. He came to her under the pretext of a holiday and then hit her on the head. Later, he burned the body on his farm in the very metal barrel where the charred remains would later be found. Investigators later said, he was a man who lived a double life. Outwardly, he was a caring father and a quiet farmer. Inside, he was a cold calculator who decided he had the right to dispose of other people's lives. When the police presented him with evidence, traces of blood, call records, testimony from an accomplice, he remained silent. he only said, "You can't prove anything. She left on her own." But the truth was already obvious. Kelsey didn't leave. She was taken. Quietly, cold-bloodedly, with a plan designed to make everyone believe it was an accident. For Kelsey's mother, the most terrifying moment was when she learned that the murder had taken place on Thanksgiving Day. She said, "That day, I thanked God for my daughter, and he burned her body." This phrase remained in the memory of investigators and journalists, as a bitter reminder that sometimes evil does not come at night. It sits next to you at the holiday table, smiles, feeds your child, and then goes out to kill. When everything came to light, the city was no longer the same. People stopped believing in simple explanations, because now everyone knew that behind an ordinary door could lie a tragedy from which it was impossible to protect oneself. The investigation into the disappearance of Kelsey Berreth became one of the most high-profile cases in Colorado's history. It all began with hope of finding her alive. It ended in horror that was impossible to accept. After a nurse from Idaho, Crystal Lee Kinney, came to the police and told them about her involvement, the investigation took shape. Before that, they only had evidence and suspicions. Now there was a story, coherent, logical, and monstrous. Crystal confessed that she had been in a secret relationship with Patrick Freese. He told her that Kelsey was a bad mother, that she was endangering the child, and that something had to be done. He said this over and over again until his request became an order. He asked her 3 times to kill Kelsey, once to poison her coffee, another to hit her with a tire iron. Crystal did not do it, but she did not leave. She listened, and by doing so, she became an accomplice. On Thanksgiving Day, Patrick invited Kelsey to his house under the pretext of, "Let's exchange pies." When she arrived, he hit her on the head with a hammer. In a house where a child was playing in the next room, he killed the woman he called his fiancée. After the murder, he called Crystal. His voice was calm. "You have to come. I need help." When she arrived, Kelsey was already dead. The room was covered in blood. There were stains on the floor and marks on the wall. Patrick gave her a mop and bleach. They spent 3 hours cleaning the apartment. She would later say, "I washed the floor and cried, but I kept going." The police later reconstructed almost every minute of that day. Crystal took Kelsey's phone to Idaho to send a message making it appear as if she had left. Patrick, meanwhile, took the body to his farm, where he burned it in an iron barrel using gasoline and wood. He watched the fire until nightfall. Then he scattered the ashes in a field. Experts found microparticles of Kelsey's blood and traces of gasoline on his clothes. On his phone, there were messages that coincided with the time of the murder. All of this became irrefutable evidence. When Patrick was arrested, he did not resist. He stood calmly and only asked, "Did you find the body?" As if that was the main thing, he was told, "We found the truth." The trial was held in a crowded courtroom. Kelsey's mother sat in the front row. On the other side was Patrick, in a gray suit, his face expressionless. The prosecutor spoke calmly, but every word hit home. He didn't kill in a fit of passion. He killed because he considered her his property. He couldn't allow her to live her own life. Crystal's testimony became the central element of the case. She pleaded guilty to concealing the crime and received a reduced sentence of 3 years. Her words were shocking. She recounted in detail the smell of blood, how Patrick made her throw away the toys to erase the evidence. She spoke without drama, as if telling someone else's story. But everyone who listened understood that she was also a victim of her own fear, her own blindness. When the prosecutor showed photos of the apartment after the cleanup, the courtroom fell silent. Even after hours of cleaning and bleaching, the blood was still visible on the walls. Red shadows, not erased by time. Patrick Frey's sentence was handed down in December 2019. Life imprisonment without the right to early release plus 30 years for other crimes. The judge said, "You didn't just take a life, you destroyed trust between a man and a woman, between parents and children, between society and the idea of safety." Patrick listened, his face impassive. He smiled only once when the judge said he had lost everything. It was the smile of a man who did not believe that loss was even possible. For the Kelsey family, the trial was not the end, but an attempt to regain control over their pain. After the trial, the mother said, "I'm not waiting for a miracle anymore. I just want her name to be remembered." After the sentence was handed down, Crystal bowed her head and cried. She said, I see that blood every day, even when I close my eyes. The Berreth case investigation went down in history as an example of how carefully calculated evil can hide behind outward normality. It destroyed not only the life of a young woman, but also the belief that home is a safe place. Patrick Freese outwardly appeared to be a man who could hardly be accused of such a monstrous crime. Tall, calm, reserved, he was a typical resident of a small Colorado town. He owned a small farm, cared for horses, and was known as a hard-working and reliable man. Those around him described him as quiet but kind. He rarely raised his voice and never got into arguments. No one could believe that this man was capable of such violence. But it was precisely this outward ordinariness that concealed his danger. Psychiatrists who studied his personality would later say that Patrick had a pronounced need for control. He perceived the world as a system where everything had to obey his rules: horses, land, women, children. Any deviation from this order provoked rage in him, which he carefully hid behind a mask of calm. His relationship with Kelsey Berreth was not a union for him, but a territory. At first, he seemed like the ideal partner, attentive, reliable, caring. But gradually, Kelsey began to notice that his kindness was a form of surveillance. He wanted to know where she was, who she was with, why she wasn't answering. He called dozens of times a day, checked her messages, controlled every detail. Kelsey didn't immediately understand what was behind it. She thought it was jealousy, that he was just worried. But over time, his jealousy turned into accusations. He said she worked too much, didn't care enough about her daughter, and didn't listen to him. He turned her mistakes into proof of her inability to be a mother. Freese's psychological profile showed typical narcissistic control. He couldn't stand independence. Kelsey was successful, smart, independent, everything that undermined his sense of superiority. She became a threat to him. He didn't want to just break up. He wanted to prove that he had power even over her life. When Kelsey began to distance herself, he realized he was losing control. And then, according to investigators, the idea of murder was born. He didn't do it on impulse, he planned it. He thought through the details, looked for ways to do it, and enlisted the help of others. His calculation was cold. Even after the murder, he acted calmly, like a man doing a job. During questioning, Patrick behaved with surprising composure. He expressed no remorse, made no excuses, showed no anger. He simply denied everything. His eyes remained empty, his voice steady. One of the investigators later said, "He talked about the death of his child's mother as if he were discussing the weather." Psychiatrists called it emotional numbness, typical of people with antisocial personality traits. He felt no sympathy. For him, Kelsey's death was not a tragedy, but a way to solve the problem. The motive he constructed in his head sounded cynically simple. He believed that the child should stay with him. He did not want to share custody, did not want to see his daughter grow up under the influence of a mother he no longer controlled. In his world, it was a logical step to remove the obstacle. But deep down, this motive was not about parenting, but possessiveness. He did not kill for the sake of the child. He killed for himself, to prove that he could control lives just as he controlled his farm, his animals, and everything else he considered his. When experts analyzed his behavior, they noticed that Freese never spoke of Kelsey as a person, only as a function, the child's mother, the woman who left. He erased her personality from his speech, just as he erased her from his life. The prosecutor said at the trial, "He didn't just take her life, he took her name. For him, she ceased to be a person long before she died." This phrase became defining for the entire case, because Patrick Freese is not a monster from the movies. He didn't scream or threaten. He just lived, worked, smiled. And in this calmness lay the most terrible thing, a complete lack of conscience. After the verdict, journalists asked his lawyer if he was remorseful. The answer was short, no. He believes he did the right thing. Such a person does not seek forgiveness. He seeks justification. And perhaps the most terrifying thing about this story is that deep down, he is still convinced that he did everything his way. The trial of Patrick Freese was the final chapter in the case, but it did not bring relief. The sentence, life imprisonment without the possibility of parole, was handed down in court in December 2019. As the judge read the verdict, he stood motionless, his arms crossed, his gaze fixed on the floor. Not a single emotion. Kelsey's mother, Cheryl, sat in the front row. In her hands was a photo of her daughter with her child. After the sentencing, she told reporters, "Justice has been served, but not peace. My grandson is growing up without his mother, and no sentence will bring back her laughter." Kelsey Berreth's story came as a shock to Colorado and served as a reminder to the entire country that evil can be mundane. It can wear a cowboy hat, smile at neighbors, and at the same time cold-bloodedly plan the murder of a woman who trusted in love. After the trial, the public discussed not only the crime, but also the system. Why did no one notice that behind the mask of a calm man lived a person capable of such a thing? Why didn't Kelsey have time to get protection from the person who was supposed to be her support? Every year on Thanksgiving, when families gather around the table, Woodland Park remembers Kelsey. Her friends light candles at the airport building where she taught students to fly. There, where the sky is open and free, that's how she wanted to see the world. Her mother says that now her daughter lives in the sky she loved so much. And every time a plane flies over the mountains, it seems as if Kelsey is reminding us that freedom is not in flying, but in the right to live without fear.